Hi, this is CBRadioMagazine.com, and today we're going to look at the Magnum DeltaForce radio. This is an AM/FM single sideband 10 meter mobile radio. This radio was produced by Magnum Radios, or RF Limited. The radio originally came out in 1996 and was produced up until 2005 when it was replaced by the Magnum OmegaForce radio. The DeltaForce did have a lot of modifications available, including an NPC mod that was quite popular for it. It can give it very loud modulation on AM as well. A lot of drivers did like to have these in their cars. The features some pretty neat things, including an LCD display and some memory modes. So let's zoom in and I'll go over the features. Okay, starting on the left hand side of the radio, we're going to look at the knobs along the bottom first, and then we'll talk about some of the other features of the radio. The knobs are dual control pots for the most part, and they're going to have an inner and outer ring control. Starting on the left hand side here, you'll see there's a volume and squelch. The volume is going to be the inside control here. Turning it all the way to the left does turn the radio off, and it controls your volume. On the outside ring is going to be your squelch control. There's a microphone gain and RF gain control here. Microphone gain is on the center, RF gain is on the outside. Okay, moving towards the center section of the radio along the bottom. This knob here is going to be for controlling your meter modes and also for Roger Beep and CW. So you can turn the meter into the SRF function, calibration function, or you can switch it to check your SWR. You can turn your Roger Beep on, or you can go to CW mode. On this dual control pot to the right is your power and calibration. The power here is variable power. This radio can lower its dead key on AM, and it also does control sideband variable power as well. Completely variable from minimum to maximum. The calibration on the outside here is for calibrating the meter for SWR. Okay, moving to the right side of the radio, we're going to see the dual control pot here for your echo. You can turn your echo completely off. The inside control is going to be your volume, amount of echo, and it can be controlled and turn it off using the inside knob. The outside knob is going to be your echo delay. On the very far outside here, we've got a dual control pot. The inside here is your clarifier. This radio has a locked clarifier from the factory. So this is going to control the receive only for other stations. So when you're listening to other stations and you need to tune towards them, this would be the inside clarifier knob that you would use. The outside knob is a talkback. This has all mode talkback, so you can have talkback in AM or single sideband, and it's variable as well, so you can turn it up or lower the talkback however you want it. Of course, on the far outside here is your frequency control, and this allows you to change the frequency or channel that you're on. Let's jump up and we'll look at some of the buttons and features along the top. One of the neat things about this radio is it does have the LCD display, but they also incorporated a standard SRF meter here and calibration SWR. A lot of people do like to look at these types of meters when they're driving. It's a little bit easier to get used to where the needle is in some cases than trying to figure out how many bars on an LED display you're seeing. So this is a very popular thing that they included. Okay, we're now zoomed in on the 8 buttons that are part of this radio, right in the center of the faceplate. A lot of people get a little bit concerned with this many buttons on a radio because they're used to some of the older style CBs, but once you learn these functions, it makes actually going through the bands and modes and frequencies and everything very easy. So I'll show you in just a minute how that works. Basically, these buttons are going to have, each one's going to have a function. Some of them are going to have dual functions. Once you convert the radio to 11 meters for CB use, it does disable some of the modes and functions that are on here. So once you convert it, like the shift function no longer works, the repeater function no longer works on this radio, and some of the other functions operate a little bit differently than they would in 10 meter mode. Let's go through the buttons real quick. The first button here is a step button, which allows you to adjust the 5th digit on the frequency display so that you can go in between channels, as most people would call it. The lower function here is a noise blank. So once again, if you were going to try and turn on the noise blank function, you'd use the function button, and that helps you access the secondary function of this button. This button here, once the radio's been modified, the call button will allow you to jump between the different frequencies, going down from the 25 megahertz up to the 29 megahertz. The call function allows you to jump between those bands of frequencies. Dim function, of course, dims the display. The radio does have a scan feature. It allows you to scan in 2 modes, either just scanning on each channel for 5 seconds and then going to the next channel, Or it can scan using the squelch, where you turn up the squelch and it can scan through the entire band until there's a station that's strong enough to break the squelch. Next button is a last channel recall button. So if you were on a channel and transmitted on there and then you've switched to another one and you want to jump back, you just would press the last channel recall button and it would jump you back there. Next button is a mode and tone button. The mode button changes the mode: AM, lower sideband, upper sideband, FM, and the tone part of this button, when you use the function and then the tone control, allows it to either have a high or low tone on the receive. The last button, which is probably the neatest one in terms of the features to me, is the memory load and memory save button. This radio allows you to save up to 5 frequencies, which include the mode of that frequency that you want to operate on. You can see a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These buttons have a third additional use, which is the memory function. What this allows you to do is jump between, say, channel 6 AM and channel 38 lower sideband, or any of your other favorite frequencies. You can jump into the ham radio frequencies if you're a licensed ham. You can do that all using that memory and then pushing the button that you want to use. That's the frequency will be loaded into each one of these. The beauty on this for memory channels is that it does save the mode, so you don't have to flip between AM or lower sideband when you're jumping around between the frequencies. Let me show you real quick this in action. And as you can see on our display, currently we're on 27.035 AM. I push the save button once, the memory load button once, and I'll press the number 1, and you can see we've jumped up to 27.385 lower sideband. That's on the number 1 button. I had that saved. On the number 2 button, I'll press memory load and then the number 2 button. Now we've jumped to 27.025 AM. Once again, I'll press the memory load button and the number 3, and now we've jumped to 29.300 FM. So those memory functions are really neat. Allows you to jump around really quickly. Once you've saved those memories, you don't have to change the frequency knob, you don't have to change the mode. Really neat feature. Let's take a quick look at the display. As you can see, this is a 5-digit frequency display. It's not an active frequency counter, it's just a display. It's going to show the frequency that you're transmitting and receiving on. If the radio does go off frequency, some people like to unlock the clarifiers and stuff on these. It's not going to show where you're tracking in terms of where you've moved the radio to for transmit or receive. So for the most part, these radios are stable. If you leave the clarifier locked, you'll never have to mess with it, and this is going to be the frequency that you will be transmitting and receiving on. Using the mode button here, you can see a switch. It'll show FM, AM, upper sideband, lower sideband, so you can use that mode button over here that we talked about and jump through the modes. If you want to display, let's say the frequency, you're in the CB band, and say you're on channel 38, you don't want it to show it in the frequency, you want it to show the channel function. You press the function button once and then that call button, and now we're in channel mode, so it'll show the actual channel instead of the frequency. If you're jumping between the bands, so let's show here, say we're in the frequency mode and we want to show the different bands. This radio uses the A, B, C, D type export function that you see in a lot of other export radios. By pressing the call button, you'll see us jump through the frequencies going from low to high. The dim button dims the display. You can see that we can enable the noise blank A&L, and it shows up on there as well. The tone control, if we turn on the tone function, it shows up there as well. And when we talk on the radio, you will see a meter on the bottom that shows the modulation, and it'll show the RF output here basically with modulation, sorry. So it shows your RF output on the meter here, and so that's kind of a neat function as well. One of the other things about this radio we'll talk about is the microphone. These microphones are actually power microphones. They have an up-down channel changing control on them, so you can adjust, change the frequency by pressing the button on the microphone. So as you can see, we press that button, just jump through, and we can jump through the frequency really fast. So that's a neat thing. If you're mobile, it's a great feature to have.